first time I truly believed we were fucked was that Wednesday night.
The Fyre Music Festival hit with a class action lawsuit.
Fyre Festival, the event that was supposed to be the experience of a lifetime.
A Fyre Music Festival creator now arrested and charged with wire fraud in a separate case.
Alrighty, 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to No Offense. Thank you for tuning in. Our guest today is very well known for creating the infamous Fyre Festival. He's a serial entrepreneur, and we're really happy to have him on. Billy McFarland, welcome to the show. Glad we can make this happen.
Thanks, Billy.
Yeah,
we're excited.
Thank you guys. Excited to go in, and glad we're finally here.
How's everything been going the past few months?
Dude, it's wild. 4 months now since my sentence ended. Just hosted a first little event last night, actually. Did like a small get-together for some of our pirate crew members, as well as like a Magnises reunion. So got to see some of the old card holders from like 8 years ago. So that's pretty wild.
How'd that go?
Good. A little hungover right now, but glad to get back out at it. So it was fun.
I love it. Yeah, I'm glad we got to do this, and we definitely want to hear more about the PYRT Collective and everything you're working on right now. But I guess, for everybody that's kind of watching right now, if you want to, we could kind of take this back to the beginning. You've started multiple businesses, and we're super interested in hearing that story. Young entrepreneur, right? 12, 13 years old, you had your own company. Give us a little bit of background on how you got into everything.
Yeah, sure. So started programming in 5th grade and have been running or attempting to run online businesses since I was like 12 years old. Had some small social network based websites throughout middle school and high school that I sold. Basically took those proceeds, went to college, living alone for the first time, experienced like New York City nightlife and like all the crazy things that I guess an 18-year-old boy dreams of.
Yeah.
Blew my middle school, high school startup cash. Realized like I had to start from square one, started programming again, and really built my first venture-backed startup during my first year of college. And that led on this 7-year run that concluded with Fyre and the Fyre Festival, and then 4 years in jail. So.
And were you referring to Magnises for that one, for the first venture-backed one?
I actually had a company before Magnises called Spling, where I ended up making software for like a lot of record labels and TV networks. And that really gave me the idea for Magnises as I started to meet and interact with all these entertainment companies that were like a pipe dream to me, like the year before in my dorm room. And so Magnises came to Spling.
I got to ask you too, so when you're 18, 19 years old and you're going to raise, a couple $100,000 from investors, how do you approach that? And what is the anxiety level like? And how do you also get over the fact that, did you ever have a doubt of like, am I too young for this, or do I know what I'm doing? Like, how did you approach that whole situation when you're that age?
So the way I found my first investor, I think is kind of like a mostly untold story, but it's fucking wild. So I get home from college, my family knows I'm working on Spling, and they get my like college report card. And it was brutal, like, straight like D minuses. School basically didn't want to kick me out, but they kind of barely passed me. And my family basically said, quit Spling, or else we're going to cut you off. And that means like, you lose our support. So I said, fuck that. I'm going for Spling. And they kind of gave me a week to get out of the house and figure my shit out. I went online and found this startup pitch event in Philadelphia. So basically used all my last money to take this Amtrak train ticket from my suburban New Jersey community to Philly, pitched to this room of like 100, bullshit service providers and salespeople and whatever. And there was this like really kind of crazy guy in the audience who comes up to me after and hands me a business card. It says on one side, professional angel investor. And on the back of it, like 40 companies' logos. And he's like, look, bikini.com is like this great company. And like, meanwhile, like he was just having fun, but had like huge wins as an investor. He goes, send me your pitch presentation and I'll take a look. So I said, yeah, sure. So on the train ride back, I had no idea like what a pitch deck was or any of this. So I put together something on the train, emailed it to him that night. And then at 5 a.m., my BlackBerry bings. He just goes, Billy, this is shit. I live in New Jersey too. Meet you for coffee in the morning. So went and met this guy for coffee, and literally at the Starbucks, and I'm like this 18-year-old kid who's like got a couple of days to get the fuck out of the house. He literally hands me a check for $100,000, like no questions asked, like no deal on a napkin, like nothing. And he goes like, go have fun, and I trust he'll give me the same terms that you give the next investor who comes on board.
That's
huge. Wow.
Yeah, his name is John Asen. He passed away a couple of years ago when I was in jail, unfortunately, but he was like this legendary, Northeast angel investor. And literally met him from this random online pitch event, and the rest is history.
Did he stay with you throughout your other ventures as well then too?
Not Fyre, but he was involved in Spling and Magnises. Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome.
Getting that first investor, or like your first pitch, like actually came through. Did that like kind of like give you like the motivation? Like, wow, maybe I can actually like you always seem like you had an entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
Did it seem like after you got there, you're like, okay, one of my ideas are actually good. I like this. This is the shit.
I think it was just like so unbelievable. I went from my world crashing down, basically saying I have to give up the thing that I cared about most at that time, to then like randomly finding this guy, John Asen, who is just a total legend, who just gave me the check in the Starbucks in New Jersey. And I think like that lesson really stuck with me both throughout good and bad times. And it kind of gave me this spirit that whatever boundaries that I was setting or being set for me were possible to basically break and go beyond. So I think that helped in a lot of ways, but it also led to like a lot of the bad decisions and like bad mental thought processes that led to the lies and the failure of Fyre Festival.
And I remember you kind of mentioning that you were, at this age and you see all these logos as a kid and now you're meeting with Def Jam Records and all this and how just surreal that was. And then you kind of mentioned how you started going into Magnises and that became a majority of your focus. How did that transpire? How did that whole story begin? I know you've told it a few times, but I'd love to hear it again.
Yeah, so I was in the second ever WeWork lab space in New York.
That's awesome.
Yeah, working on Spling. At the time, I think it was like 15 companies and you had to apply. So it was mostly like early venture-backed startups. It was like a pretty cool group and awesome environment. And I literally went to dinner one night and a friend just pulled out, their family's black Amex card and we all split our like little dinner bill and was kind of in awe by this card. And I'm thinking like, I know every entrepreneur in my WeWork wants one of these damn like black cards, but we're all kind of like early stage guys and no one really had any cash. So I went on Alibaba, and this is way before Alibaba was like a thing in the US, and bought like a black piece of metal and a credit card copier. It got to my WeWork. I copied my Chase debit card onto the black metal card. Found some guy named Barry in the Diamond District of New York, so like engraved like my name and Chase card number on the card, and like went to a pizza place, went out that night, and like got more attention than I ever have in my life. I'm like, all right, this is fucking sweet. And I started selling these cards to people in the WeWork labs, and literally that time Magnises was born.
That's
so cool.
That's kind of like before, like Apple has like the whole metal card thing. It's kind of like the first like metal card trend that you started, kind of.
This was early 2013.
So it made it like accessible. But real quick, a side question for the WeWork, since it was one of the first ones, did you get to meet Adam Newman? Was he like one of the people pitching you on it, or? Yeah, he was there. It's literally like they only had one floor at the time. That's
so cool. Yeah, and it was called WeWork Labs. I guess it wasn't even officially like WeWork yet. Same concept, like same company, but they were early on in the process. And I think their initial idea was companies who went through like incubators, like these accelerator programs that got funding, didn't really have a place to go after, and we were one of them. So they essentially were partnering with these like accelerator programs to be like the next step space. And 10 years later, I guess WeWork's been through it as well. So
that's why I asked. That's so funny that Adam Newman's kind of in there as well. It's like full circle. We loved that show. We Crashed. That was amazing. Yeah,
dude, that's the only one I watched. Like that whole scripted like internet age like, story series. It's the only one I saw.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I love those miniseries.
Did you ever watch any of the, just might be hopping forward, did you ever get a chance in jail to watch any of the documentaries that came out of you or anything like that?
No.
Probably would
do it.
Yeah. Was that more of just from like a perspective that you weren't ready to deal with it yet, or you just didn't want to watch, like, because I know there is fluff pieces with stuff like it's in their hands. So like they might be saying a truth that necessarily might not exactly have been what had happened, but like kind of close, but they're missing like little nuances. So did you just avoid that?
I think I was just trying to protect myself at the time because I knew I was going to get so pissed at whatever anybody said. And like, even if it was 90% true and I was still like totally wrong, I would focus on that like 10% and be like, no, it didn't happen that way. And like, I'd want to go respond and just get in more trouble. So it was almost like to protect myself. And now it's like a pride point. Like, I'm not watching that.
Yeah,
I think I'd do the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, actually, you were probably going through, tons of like, a bunch of stuff at that time probably would have been the best. It's probably a wise decision on your part.
And just not being able to respond almost makes it worse.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. You have no outlet in jail, right? So like you can't take your like emotions or aggression or anger or like resentment or sadness out anywhere. So you're kind of just like stuck in your own mind.
Yeah,
it makes everything worse.
Did you learn a lot from being in that place for so long about how to kind of like process your own emotions and things like that? Because you were never able to like, you know, utilize the same outlets that you would in the normal world.
Yeah. And just like, I can't do it again. Oh, so bad.
Yeah.
I imagine.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Moving on, after Magnises, how did you start getting from Magnises? Where did like the whole Fyre idea come from? Because I know you had the app first, right? And then it kind of evolved into Fyre Festival from there. From stepping from Magnises to Fyre, where did that come from? Where was the bridge there?
So there were two real components of Magnises that led to Fyre. The first was that we were booking a lot of these like B-list rap artists to come perform small concerts for our Magnises members.
Yeah. And
all kind of gets back to this idea, like, what did 15-year-old Billy like wish he could do? And like, I want to hang out with rappers. So now Magnises gives me like A, great excuse, and B, you know, the $7,000 I need to go book some artist to perform 3 songs. So, so I started booking these rappers for Magnises parties, and the entire process just made absolutely no sense. Like, I had a semi-interesting company with a good audience, right? Like, most of these artists would love to get in front of the Magnises audience, and my money was real, and like we were paying, like, but it was still so hard to get these deals in front of the right people. And there were just so many pieces of shit who claimed to like represent these artists or be managers or be agents, and almost all of them were just like lying. And I was paying middlemen and just going through all this rigmarole just to get in front of these artists. And so eventually, like at one of these bookings, I'm like, damn, I should just make an app that lets all the people like me, like all the idiots like me, go directly to these guys.
Welcome if you need them. Here you go.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm sure
the
there has
Wild
to be
West.
There's got to be 1,000 of me, and if like one of these artists could do 1,000 shows, like they would totally take it. So the entire genesis of Fyre app was trying to provide this like transparency and almost like an open marketplace in this world where smoke and mirrors and like gated access was the norm.
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly such a great idea. So then that kind of transpired after the whole Ja Rule situation, right? Going through booking him. How did that all happen? How'd you guys get connected?
He was like the final leg in that journey where I'm like, all right, this is fucking ridiculous. Like I went through 5 people who all told me different answers, different prices, like different relationships. And then I asked him when he was finally there to perform, like, why did it take so long? And he goes, oh, I found out about this like this morning or last night or whatever the time frame was. Like that just made no sense. Yeah. There has to be a way where like I can go directly to him where it's not too invasive for the talent, and they can just see an offer, like click yes, no, or negotiate, and like keep it like that. Almost like an Airbnb, I guess, you know, for entertainment. And that's where the Fyre app came from. But meanwhile, while this was all happening, is a couple of Magnises members were hobbyist pilots for fun, like not as their careers, but just like literally as like weekend hobbies. Mm-hmm. And they started taking groups of Magnises members to these outer islands of the Bahamas. So on one end, I'm trying to book rappers for these small shows in like New York or Washington, D.C. And on the other end, I'm taking 24 Magnises members to these outer islands with populations of like 10 people for these wild weekend trips. And these worlds slowly started to converge.
That is, when you first went down there, were you just exposed to a whole new world and you were like almost addicted to it? Because I could imagine
so much
how
so
much
that
fun that would be.
He stayed there for a while, right? Didn't you like kind of move there?
It's like the ultimate playground. And we literally took this like really shitty 1960s propeller plane from New York to this outer island, basically ran out of gas. And you just kind of see this like decrepit asphalt landing strip. And the pilot's like, oh, don't worry. We wake them up. And he's like, doing a flight like 200 feet in the air, like circling around this guy's house. Like, what the fuck is he doing? So we go and land at the landing strip. The guy's there in his little like golf cart, like to pick us up, or else he wouldn't have known we landed on the island. So
that's insane.
Just like introduced me to this world where there were no borders, there were no boundaries. Yeah. You take these little planes and you have this ultimate playground of like the most beautiful water and adventure destination ever seen, with incredible warm-hearted people and just like Magnises members who were open for adventure. And it was like this perfect formula.
We should have got him on the podcast during that. That would have been a hell of a podcast. Come down for that. Oh my God. That would have been a blast.
Okay. So here's my podcast idea. There's like, I can't go to the Bahamas right now, but there are maybe another country out there, but there are 1,000 islands in the Bahamas, and like each one has its own theme. So I think an amazing podcast would be an episode from like a different island every episode. So you bring like an interesting guest, like XYZ guest at Danger Reef or at this island, and you pick like one really cool adventurous island and change the scene up for every single guest. I think that would be awesome.
I think that would be awesome. Yeah.
We're sold. We're sold. Let's do it.
We're hiring.
So I think that'd be fun.
We can send a Navy SEAL down there first to clear it.
Yeah, there we go.
That's great. Like that's one of the episodes. Like, you know.
Exactly.
So when you were traveling, obviously you're going down there, you're having a blast with like your group of friends and whoever you brought and everything. Was that just the inspiring part of the adventure of just going to all these islands? You're like, man, this is like a crazy ass feeling. You can go to an island that no one's ever been to, and you can go snorkel or scuba dive or find things that people haven't been on for years. Is that kind of like the whole inspiration for Fyre, like just like the adventure part of it?
Absolutely. I think like a lot of these early adventures were just things I never really knew you could do. You know, they weren't like what you get in your typical resort at some tropical destination. Like I just didn't know that you could just like take a jet ski in the middle of the night and just like, you know, go night diving with no help and like no instructors. And, like,
Sounds incredibly dangerous.
And you're probably going to be okay. Like you could just go and do it. Like all this stuff really opened my eyes to what was possible. And I think that at the same time, I was kind of realizing as these trips started growing and getting proven out, we were taking more like established people on the trips who in New York were like super stuck up and like had their army of assistants and like offices and all this kind of shit. And all of a sudden we're on this remote island and all of that, like, you know, I'm the most important man in the world pretense is totally dropped. And like, as we're doing these adventures, it's all stripped away and these people are really coming together. And then we come back to New York and it didn't fade away. Like we were all becoming like really close friends and confidants. So I think there's like this genuine magic to it is like when you push the boundaries of life with people, you become close.
You take them out of their comfort.
Yeah. It's like, and a really extreme example, like people who go to war together, right? They often like form great like brotherhoods and friendships. And this is the less extreme example of that. Is like when you try like wild things with different people, like you often become close. And I think that could be really channeled and bottled in a good way.
It's probably because you're doing like a once in a lifetime like memory that like you'd remember a lot, and you're with these certain people. So when every time you think about it, you're like, oh man, I miss them. Like, and just you guys have become super close. It's probably part of it
for sure.
And how long were you doing this until the idea of the festival kind of came about?
Yeah, so we were doing these trips for 2 years before Fyre Festival like even like was a thing. So 2 years later, we had literally just launched like the Fyre booking app. Yeah. And it was like an early September weekend in New York. It was Friday. I'm literally hungover in bed at like 5 p.m. still. Like I was fat as shit at the time. So I'm like,
you look good.
I was all alone, literally like eating ice cream in my bed. Like, not even kidding. Like at 5 p.m. And I'm like, fuck, I want to go back to the Bahamas. A few months since the last trip. But I'm like, I'm doing a little bit better now. Like maybe I can get a jet down there instead of some shitty propeller plane this time. Nice. So I call this guy who worked for me. I'm like, dude, like let's go to the Bahamas, get a plane. And like 7 hours later, I rounded up 10 random friends and we're on a jet back to the Bahamas. And we're there like doing this weekend trip. My old high school buddy goes, you should totally do a festival here for all your Magnises.
So it's all his fault. And it's that guy's fault.
Yeah, it's all his fault.
Was there drinking revolving around this idea when you guys made it?
I don't even remember. Like, I think it was during the day. We were just like walking around one of the sandbars, and he's like, "You should totally do a festival here."
That's an incredible idea.
He must have not.
I still think it's awesome.
Yeah, he must have not known who he was talking to. He's like talking bullshit. He's like, "Yeah, man, somebody should throw a festival here or something." You're like, "Yeah, we really should throw a festival here. That's a great idea."
And he's some like I'll give him. He's like some super boring corporate like sales like middle management like guy, right? Like can never actually fathom that idea of becoming a reality. I'm like, no, that's a great idea. And like, what if we make it a treasure hunt too? And he looks at me like I'm crazy. He's like, you're really going to do this, right? And that was September. And then fast forward 3 months to December of that year, our marketing video drops. So it all just like,
that's fast.
It happened like that.
And I want to touch on that for sure. That whole campaign, I honestly think that was one of the most impressive social media campaigns that has gone on.
It was so dope.
I mean, how did that transpire? Like, was that your idea? Did you work with an agency? Did you have your team around you? Like, how did that whole idea of let's bring the top influencers together and have them do a coordinated basically post? How did that all happen?
So many people have said like, oh, it was their idea. And the reality is it really wasn't one person's idea.
Yeah.
It just like came together from 3 months of just trying to up the ante and push the stakes in the island. Like we get back from that trip and I tell like the one guy who I think was in one of the documentaries named Delroy, who was like the bartender for that first trip. I'm like, Delroy, I'm coming back in 2 weeks and we're doing a festival here. And he's like, yeah, all right. So I get back to New York and I'm like, okay, I think we need models to help promote this festival. So I call the president of like, at the time, the biggest modeling agency in the world, and like give a request list for 5 of the who's who of the modeling world. And he literally just like laughs me off the phone. He's like, yeah, not happening, kid. Like, I don't care what you're offering or what you can pay or what island you claim to have been to for vacation. Like, these girls aren't coming. So I kind of worked my way down the list until an agency finally says yes. And we go back 2 weeks later as promised, do the exact same trip. And the girls come back and they're like, that was the best fucking weekend of my life.
That's
and
awesome.
then word gets around. So every 2 weeks we would like step up one rung on the ladder until, a few trips later, the same guy who laughed us off called us back and was like begging for us to take his talent.
And did you have to pay that talent whenever they called you and asked to come back? Did you have to pay them or did they want it for like their own promotion as well?
So we paid for like the super A-list ones to come.
Okay.
And then as soon as we did that, like they all just wanted to come for their own promotion. Mm-hmm. I don't think this has been covered. We did like an open casting call that winter, and like we had like it was really bad. Like,
That's so funny.
We had this. It was really bad. We had this Tribeca like storefront townhouse, like a 3-story thing, and on the main floor was our tech floor. So we had all these like engineers, their headphones on, their big monitors, and we had this like super nice conference room downstairs. So all these girls wanted to come on the trip, and our entire game plan of the casting call was to build a database of every female influencer in New York that we can form a relationship with and like get them to market with us. So they come in their big coats in the winter and then like have their bikinis underneath and be prancing through in like the middle of February. So all of our like programmers are like, what the fuck is going on?
Like, oh my God, this is heaven.
This is crazy. But yeah, and our entire thing was like, we would do this and just like build a database. And we had like literally a full-time guy whose job it was to manage this like influencer database of talent.
Hell of a job.
And then, so I guess it wasn't quite February at this point, but some point in like the winter. And then our strategy was, okay, we have so many people now. Let's have them all promote this at exactly the same time. The ones who came on the trip, obviously were required to post a tile, but everybody else, we just in exchange them 2 free tickets for their post. And that worked great because like we wanted them to be there, right? Like, so it would make the event look better and make it more fun. And so they all want to come. That's like a really cool,
That is extremely impressive because just coordinating like 10 people for like a simultaneous type of same day post is extremely hard. Because like I've done this stuff like that in the past, and it's extremely difficult. On the scale you did is like I'm sure it's very easy when we're not very easy. It's a lot easier when you're working with agencies that that house a lot of this talent, but still it's extremely difficult and a very big feat, I think, actually.
So what we did was we took probably like 15 of the top ones to the island for that day and literally put everybody like in the communal living room and had these like chalkboards where we wrote exact instructions. We're like, all right, guys, we're not moving until you all post. Like, all right, wait, go. Like, and the good thing is like once they all posted exactly the same time, everybody else we'd like spoken to, once they saw the A-listers do it, they were quick to follow on board. So it was all about getting that core group like in person to make sure it actually got done.
And were you just like refreshing your feed and just seeing how it was going? Like, what were the nerves like in that moment when everyone posted? Were you like, let's hope this goes as well as we plan?
So we like just as they were posting, our Wi-Fi in the island went out.
Holy shit!
It's like they're like threw my computer in a backpack, hopped on a jet ski for like the 20-mile ride to like the next island, had their own cell phone tower. So I get there like see what's going on, or like our website's crashing, and like we don't really know what's happening, and then just like start celebrating and partying, and wake up the next morning and like we sold a shitload of tickets, and I'm like, oh my God, this is real. Like it is happening.
Now, what was it like partying with everybody like that?
Yeah, I got to know. There's got to be a story there, a story or two.
Yes, I think just like people connecting around the adventures. We like sort of unplanned in the beginning, had this like 3-day script, which would culminate in a third night just being this crazy island party. And like you're in the middle of nowhere. There's like no pollution. Like you're seeing all the stars. There's a bonfire in the beach. There's like phosphorescence in the water. So like when you're like swimming around, it's like lighting up. It's just like it's as magical as it sounds. But
it's very smart because it's like you were taking these people all on these little trips, and then like you were kind of just showing them what it could be like, which made them extremely interested, that they wanted a ticket. That, I mean, if you gave them free tickets, you don't have to, I don't know exactly. I'm sure everyone was different if you had to pay the money or if they just wanted tickets or like, but it's very smart because you were taking these people on this trip, showing them the adventure of how fun it is. And then they're correlating to, okay, well, if this is a festival, this is going to be fucking insane. I want to go to this. Yeah. And you could use that almost. It's very smart.
And the best thing is they would come back, and then beyond like the online marketing, the like top talent has an incredible network of buyers, right? Like the most successful guys in the world try to court like the top models in the world. Like that's just like the way the world works, for better or worse. And so they would come back and just like say how great the trip was. And so now the potential ticket buyer access we're getting from these like word to word, like mouth to mouth sales is super good. And that helped the marketing as well, beyond all the online stuff.
Did you learn a lot of this from just growing Magnises? Because you obviously have a very good touch on what consumers want. And was that just kind of through your years of experience, or was there a certain point where you really started to figure out what people really, you know, for the status, for example, like when did that kind of click for you?
I think with Magnises, we were just starting to learn like what kind of moments went naturally viral in terms of like, what could we do where someone's going to go back and tell 4 friends that they have to buy like this service or this product or this experience right now? And the trips were clearly like what we were hitting on. Then once we started bringing the talent on these trips, that's like, okay, this is like a much hotter touch point than anything we've ever had before. And we have this moment in time right now where we're going to this amazing place and no one else in the world is going to. Like, let's capitalize on this and go all in.
That's amazing. Okay, so after you sold a lot of tickets, or you guys sold out, I don't know, did you guys sell out that after you guys did that whole campaign?
Not that day. Like I think that in reality, we just didn't know what our capacity was going to be. So we just kept adding like more expensive ticket options, whether it was like a boat or a house or just like something crazy. And we sold some, we didn't sell others, but this is now like mid-December of 2016. And in the marketing video, we promised a festival date for April of 2017. Wow. So we literally had just over 4 months to make all of this happen. And that was just,
do you think that was like
impossible.
The biggest issue with everything that happened? Was it mostly like a timeline thing? Like maybe you just didn't give yourself enough time to set everything up?
I think like biggest issue is me lying to like the investors, because like that pushed help away. And like, it sent me to jail. It fucked everything up. The second biggest issue was the timeline. Okay. And if we had 18 months or even 12 months, I don't know if we'd be sitting here right now. Maybe it's a different conversation.
Right. Yeah. Well, because
maybe our podcast would be from the island.
That's what I'm saying.
You wouldn't have been like in a corner though, and you wouldn't have had to maybe say those things if you had just more time in general.
What was who determined the timeline? Why did you want to push 4 months so much? Was it just like you didn't want the virality to die down?
I think with Magnises, like the events we were doing were on such a small scale, but they're always at the last minute's notice. Like the longest lead time for Magnises event was like 2 weeks. So I'm still kind of like living on this in the moment entrepreneurial mindset. So to me, 4 months felt like an eternity. And like, it sounds crazy right now, but I couldn't even fathom planning something 4 months out. So we're sitting there making the video. I'm like, yeah, April sounds great. Like,
that's awesome.
If it's like 10 years away. Yeah. But I just couldn't like comprehend like how little time it actually is, and like what the logistics actually would have required to make this work.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is like, you know, you obviously surround yourself with a pretty good team. And when they were telling you like, maybe we should extend this, were you just like you were saying, were you just living the fast life and like, I know this is possible, I can make this happen? Or what was your mindset at that time?
I for sure thought we were going to pull it off, but I was also scared to do anything like that would make people unhappy. And I was like based out of insecurity. So I was like too much of a pussy to pick up the phone and say, we're not going to be ready. I just didn't know how to make that phone call and deliver that bad news, whether it was to ticket holders, investors, employees, whatever. I was just too scared to, you know, I didn't know how to handle the responsibility and, you know, press the pause button. And that probably would have solved a lot of problems.
I feel like just like doing this whole thing, you're always going to have people that say you can't do it. But, you know, being an entrepreneur, you're dealing with people that say it's impossible all day. So from that aspect, I do get your mindset on that? Because like people say shit's impossible all the time. You're like, well, we're just gonna make it happen. That's how the best people in the world, the best entrepreneurs in the world are. So I get that, but maybe a little bit of an overstep. But I get it. I get it in the broad sense things at the time. So I understand that.
Do you remember?
I think.
Oh, sorry. Keep going.
Yeah, I think there's like a deeper issue I had where when a smart person would tell me I couldn't do something or I really wanted to prove them wrong. And I think it's good. And like, if you have dumb people online who are like, oh, this is the stupidest thing ever, like you're going to fail. Like you just can't listen to that. But if like someone really, really experienced is telling you that, like you should probably listen. And for some reason, I never cared about like the people who didn't matter, if you will, but like the smart people, I'm like, oh yeah, well, fuck you. I'm going to show you wrong. I think that led to a lot of issues.
I got this.
Yeah.
Do you remember, when did you get, if you remember this, do you remember the first time you were put in the position where you needed to lie to an investor? And did you kind of have that moral dilemma in your head and had to make a split decision, or do you remember that at all, or did it kind of all blend together throughout this whole process?
I don't remember the first time. I do remember like a couple of key moments where the lies got worse. Like initial lies, like, hey, everything is great, to, here's fake numbers with a real revenue where there's like no gray area. It's like totally black and white wrong. But there was certainly like a handful of turning points where it's like, okay, I'm taking a step now that like I can never come back from. And I knew at the time every single one of those steps was wrong. I just like had the inability to zoom out and, press the cancel button and just like stop the damage.
Was that
crazy.
From a point of there was just too much money in already that you just couldn't stop? Or was it just like an ego thing? Or was it literally just like the money that was already poured into? You're like, we have to try to pull this off because like if it doesn't go off, like people are gonna lose tons of money.
I think that's the right angle, but the real root cause was I was so like absorbed in what I had going on. I just couldn't understand there was life beyond like the success or failure of the Fyre Festival. And like, to me, it was everything. But in reality, yes, some of the investors were, more well off than others, but to most of the investors, like this wasn't the most important thing going on in their life. And it really was only the most important thing for me. And I couldn't comprehend that. And I felt like, life or death just mattered based on the success of the Fyre Festival. And the only way to live or to succeed was to get the money to make it happen. And logic was wrong, but that was like the flawed logic at the time.
Go ahead.
You, kind of going through this whole thing, right? I mean, you hear a lot about the urgent payment sheet, right? And how you'd have $50K one morning, $4 million at one point.
Crazy.
Beyond trying to, and I would love to dive into how that whole thing went, but what was your stress level like throughout this time and how did you deal with that?
Just was super, super unhealthy in like all phases of life. Would stop working out, would eat like 3 dinners a night, got fat as shit.
Attaboy.
like could barely have sex. Like physically, I was just like falling apart. Just like was not in a good spot. And I literally like wake up at 9, hungover, get this daily urgent payment sheet, figure out how the fuck I can find $1 million by 2:00. Get the money by 2, like solve fires till like 8 or 9, go out and drink, and then like wake up and just do it all again. And it was like this terrible blur of fearing waking up in the morning, just knowing I was gonna get fucking kneed in the face with some Excel document that was nearly impossible to fulfill.
The turnaround time on the investment is so impressive, though. I mean, that's insane to be able to get X amount of dollars in a few hours like that. So, hats off on that end for that part.
Yeah, it was a terrible way to survive.
Did you have just finding all those investors? Did you have a handful you would keep going to, like, oh, I need this, or like that you knew that would give them to because they believed in it, or did you have to like go like to like how, I don't know how many investors you guys exactly had, like whatever, tens of hundreds of investors to be like, hey, we need this little amount, or did you just go to like lump sums with certain guys that trusted you?
When things got bad, I would put pressure on some of the investors I knew pretty well to like introduce me to more people. So I would call them up and be like, I'm making this name. Like, John, I need, $500K today. Like, who can I talk to? Like, it needs to happen or else we're fucked. And like, I would put the pressure in their court, and then like they would introduce me to their friends, and that was like a never ending snowball. Right. So
did it ever feel like it was going to end?
Yeah.
Where you were just like, you can't wait till day of and just get this out of the way.
Yeah. Like I had a giant sign on the wall, like days until Fyre Festival. And I thought that like, okay, I'm going to get there. The entire team is going to take 2 weeks off just to, reset so we all don't have heart attacks, and then we're off to the races.
When I remember specifically just kind of throughout research and documentary and such, there was one part they were talking about where you kind of toward the last minute, you came up with these wristband ideas where people could load their money on. Mm-hmm. And, what was the thought process behind that? And, was that something that was just an additional revenue to get this going, or, how did that whole thing come about too?
It was like 90% because of revenue, 10% because of practical utility. I guess practical utility was that we just didn't really have safe spaces for people to store thousands of dollars of cash on the island. So like the utility was to preload the bracelets, and you could actually use those on the island for like drinks, food, jet skis, whatever activity you want to participate in. But the other 90% was that we needed the money, and that was a quick way to get, to solve one day as a daily urgent payment for a couple $1 million for the bracelets. Sure. And like we were just like going through every source to get it.
If everything would have gone in, like everything would have been set up with the money that had been sunk in, do you guys think you guys would have netted profit?
I doubt it. There were just so many like open balls in the air with like sponsorships and like live streams and so many things that we're just like trying to get together at the last minute. I think the first weekend we would have just been totally crushed, but the second weekend we probably would have been able to close some like pretty good stuff for like weekend 2. That said, all in all, we would have like definitely been in the red, but we would have had a brand, right? And like that was kind of the gamble we were taking.
Take us through day of. All this is going on. You've been through this shitstorm. You've done a lot of things you probably shouldn't have done. What is it like? I remember the night before there was a storm, right? Yeah. Give us the whole run through of just how it went.
Yeah. So the festival was technically Friday through Sunday for 2 weekends. The big issue we're getting people there. So what we did was charter 2 737 jets, set up a temporary terminal in the Miami International Airport, and schedule these planes to fly back and forth all day long, starting Thursday through the following Monday, to get everybody there to take them all back. So the first plane was scheduled to arrive at like sunrise on Thursday morning, so 7 a.m., 8 a.m., whatever it was. So Wednesday night comes along, and we're not quite ready. So I said, okay, no problem. Let's set lights up. We'll work, overnight and get the festival site ready to go. And as if like on cue, this storm just rolls in and it just doesn't go away. It's like every hour we're just like looking outside. The storm is there. The storm is there. The team's starting to fall asleep. People are like slumped over on the counter. We need to move one of our like container trucks. We give the intern the keys. He runs over the water line. Now the water is taken out. The bathrooms and the showers have no water now. And it's like everything that could go wrong the night before just like went wrong. And it was a blur where, nighttime preparations became, okay, guys, the plane just landed. What do we do now?
God,
that's
that
nuts.
Must have been, that must have
scary.
At a point, like you guys, you obviously had an idea that this was not ready. Was there last minutes where you're like, we have to pull this, and like people, because I saw the documentary, people said they were telling you like, hey, we have to pull this, we have to pull this, we have to pull this, and you were just, they said that you had just like, oh, we have a positive mindset here, we don't work with negativity. Looking back is looking, I get it, trust me, but looking back on that, do you think that how should I say this? Was there any opportunities where you're like in your head where you're like, I should pull this, but then you're just like just couldn't do it?
The first time I truly believed we were fucked was that Wednesday night when the storm was there and our core like 20 people were just depleted. And the people that were full of energy for like the 4 months prior were like literally like slumped over like this, and like I could barely wake them up. And at that point, I'm like, okay, something is wrong here. Like, what do we do? But it really wasn't until that night before that I could at least comprehend that myself.
In the documentary as well, they were kind of talking about you took a very long ATV ride while all this was going on, day of, right? What was kind of the point of that whole thing?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't recall that.
No. Maybe that was one of those parts.
So, what did I say?
They basically said like everything was going on and you got on an ATV and took off and no one saw you for like 2 hours. That's at least what was recounted.
Really? Oh, really?
But that may have been a fluff.
I certainly like the ATV was my method of transportation. So that,
sure.
But yeah, I don't know where I would have gone. I think what I do remember is that I took a phone call from one of the big tabloids while I was standing on this milk crate, and they were actually live streaming the situation on their website. And the reporter from the same tabloid goes to me, hey, we heard you ran away and you're on your yacht with cocaine and hookers and you're not at the festival. And I'm like, your very website is live streaming right now, surrounded by everybody like in the middle of the festival site. So like, while I was certainly wrong, it just kind of goes to show, I think, how some of the stories spread.
Yeah, like you were saying, right? It's hard to play a game of telephone, right? Especially when you couldn't respond to it.
Yeah, for sure.
So when everyone was all, obviously visibly angry when they showed up and everything was not what they were promised, all this stuff was flooded. What was in your head? What was the situation to resolve? Like, what was your steps to make this, I guess, better?
So planes start landing, and like the final decision that ruined any attempt at a successful event. Like, mind you, I was still going to jail because I lied to the investors, and that wasn't going to change at this point. I didn't know it, but like that was a reality. But the final bad decision was that, okay, the tent area is not ready yet. Let's send everybody to this beach on the other side of the island, and let's send over all the boats, all the jet skis, a bunch of booze, give everybody free alcohol, like let them go have fun and party on this beach, and to give us another like 10 hours to get this place ready. In reality, 10 hours wasn't going to do anything, and it would have been much better to deal with like 80 people at a time. It's like was a plane load coming to the festival site first thing in the morning when they're fresh and alert, and people probably would have been okay. But the fact was that we sent like all 1,000 people who arrived that day to this party island and had them come back at like 10 o'clock to the tents. So at that point, they're wasted. There's 1,000 people all trying to find their keys to their tents at the exact same time. And it was dark and like just chaos ensued. So, and like in reality, 10 hours wasn't enough to dramatically change how it looked anyway. Like we had what we had and we didn't have what we didn't have. So that like terrible decision cost the event at the end.
And backing up a little bit, honestly, a little bit before this all happened, obviously there was an island switch, right? And it was marketed as still the same island. How did you obviously knew people were going to find out about this. Like they obviously were not going to Escobar's Island or the new island that we picked. Like, who made that decision, and why wouldn't you be just transparent that, hey, we can't do it on this island. We need to go to this certain area and we have to build the infrastructure on here.
Dude, that's like one of the biggest lessons, like for me and everybody else listening. We got kicked out of like 2 previous islands and had to keep switching the locations. Why couldn't I just say it? Like, I think it almost would have added to the story and the mystique and made the festival even cooler if I'm like, hey guys, our marketing video went fucking crazy. We said it was Pablo Escobar's island. So they said if I ever land there again, they're going to sue my ass. We have to switch locations. Like, I literally could have done a 15-second video for no cost saying that. And I think like the festival now goes like even more viral, right? But like the fact that I was so scared to admit any kinks like in the armor just created so many issues. And I think like transparency just helps there in so many ways, because like a real story is more interesting than me saying, hey, things are perfect. And like when everybody knows like something probably isn't exactly right under the scenes.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. You've had like some of the biggest lessons that you could have as an entrepreneur so far. And obviously you're planning on continuing on your journey of entrepreneurship and everything. So that's cool that you get to use all those things and kind of like, what are you working on next?
Yeah. So like, once again, super early for me. It's been 4 months so far, but the first project that I'm working on is called PYRT, spelled PYRT. And the concept is to kind of get back to the good parts of all of this. And that really starts with these 20, 30 person trips to these adventurous areas. So speaking with a couple of like really small remote boutique hotels that PYRT would ideally take over. And on these islands, we'd host like podcast hosts, artists, content creators as a place to get away, try these crazy adventures and just like create content. But the goal this time is, instead of trying to do like a physical festival, we're testing these live stream rigs where we live stream everything happening at this island or really any hotel location, and then give the people watching the ability to actually like change and impact the lives of all the talent who are on the island.
So it's like a reality show kind of vibe, a little bit.
Yeah, but it's like, it's almost like The Sims, but like with this real rarefied place and real characters. And it's allowing anybody to come, but not only watch, but to really get involved with the lives of just super interesting people doing crazy things.
Have you started pitching this to people yet, to investors and things like that? And have you hit any roadblocks?
Yes, I can't. I'm not allowed to raise capital, just due to my like charges essentially. So we're just trying to fund things for like, we're doing media deals, currently filming a TV show, and then have like an agency called PYRT Collective. And we're just helping other brands like viral stunt marketing work. So really just like hustling and trying to find any ways to get revenue to fund the tech of PYRT. Like engineering salaries are still crazy. So.
And you know, when you were serving time, right? I mean, I'd love to dive a little bit more into that. You know, I know you spent a lot of time in solitary and, you know, the story behind bags and everything, but, yeah, like
he DM'd me after the podcast
really?
recently.
Who did?
Yeah. So Bags, you're listening.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Let me see what day he DM'd me, but it was like within the past couple of weeks.
That is amazing.
That's the guy without the colon, right? Is that the story? Or,
yeah, but crazy side note on this. Let me pull my message here from Bags.
I'm surprised he found you too, right after you were talking about him.
Yeah. Okay, I'm pulling it up. He's been sending me a lot of stuff. On Friday, last Friday. So like, yeah, six days ago, he DM'd me. But he goes, PYRT, pretty good. Heard you got out. Heard you mentioned me in your podcast. LOL. So what's crazy is like Bags is probably, I don't know how old you are, Bags, like in your 50s now, right? Mid 50s. And we did a couple of podcasts, but we've also done like the traditional media run. Like I went on like Piers Morgan, like Fox News, Good Morning America, like all like the mainstream media places. And middle-aged guy who lives in like the Pittsburgh area saw about this on like the podcast and not like the mainstream news. So it just kind of goes to show how like 3 YouTubers can just like absolutely come and destroy these like mainstream media machines. And it kind of just like shows like where media is going and the power of these new age podcasts.
It's definitely the new wave of just everyone consuming their information.
Yeah.
People do have the choice now of who they want to listen to. And it is funny how that is moving away from traditional media outlets. But for everyone that doesn't know, tell the story about Bags, how you met him and all that situation.
Yeah. Bags is a great guy. So we'll preface it with that. Yeah. Love Bags. He helped me, apart from the shitting, he helped me get through a lot of the time. But he was actually there when I came up with the PYRT content. But anyway, I was alone in solitary and a lawyer basically complained. And they go, okay, no problem. You know, we'll give you a cellie, like a cellmate, as they call it. And we're all kind of behind these like thick metal doors. And you can't really see anybody. People can kind of come and like scream through the sides and you can kind of hear people in different cells. They're like, oh, McFarland, you're getting bags. You're getting bags. I'm like, oh God, what does this mean? So Bags comes in. He's like, hi, they call me Bags. They got a lot of money. And then they hear everybody else screaming, that's not true. That's not true. So the reality was it was true, but there's also more to the story. So Bags had gotten into a shootout with the police. And in the shootout, lost his colon and never got the colon back. So he'd have to, you know, shit every 30 minutes. But on the flip side is he sued the police and won a bunch of money. So he did. So it was like part money bags and part like bathroom situation. But yeah, Bags is hilarious. Like, I guess he's out now, which is great to hear. But yeah, good guy and, you know, helped me push through it.
Moving on from like Fyre Festival now and like obviously like the fuck ups that we're seeing there, going into PYRT now, did you learn a lot of like experiences that like obviously didn't work in the past that you know like what things you're gonna do now? Like, what's the biggest thing you took away from not to do from Fyre Festival?
So I'm trying to become like better at finding people who I want to like work with and be friends with for a long period of time. And I think at Fyre, I was really bad at like churning people out. It's like, okay, I need to get this done. So let me just go find someone who can do it. And I was like I had a lot of transactional relationships in my life. And I think like that just like wasn't a really rewarding way to live. And so I'm trying to just do a better job of like the core PYRT team right now of finding people who like, whether it's PYRT or something else we're coming up with in 2 years, like we'll stick together for a long period of time. And it's been obviously really, really early on, but there's been a number of people who I'm like, okay, wow, like this is a much better and sustainable way to live. So less about trying to like use someone's skill set and just paying for it and more about just like finding good people that you want to be around. And like life is better that way.
In, in lieu of just full transparency, have you been presented with challenges with meeting new people right now? And how has that been when it comes to people trusting you? You know, you're kind of coming in the same industry, but you know, how's that been?
It's been an experience and like definitely have different emotional waves. there were, there was a guy I met in jail who was really kind of quick to show up. He got out before me and was like quick to kind of show up at my doorstep when I went to the halfway house, and like was supporting me a little bit in the halfway house and like trying to become like, friends with me and get involved with me. And then found out that he had been lying to my friends, my family, my coworkers, everybody around me about his history. He did like a lot of fucked up things. And like, that was kind of scary for me. And like, so I had to like kind of cut ties from a lot of the prison group, which was, tough to do because that's who I was surrounded by for a number of years. And then after that, it's like, how can I just slow the fuck down and just find the right people? So I think like we've done a pretty decent job with the core group. I think one thing I'm still trying to understand are the people who weren't like directly impacted by like Fyre or Magnises, who experienced a lot of the good shit, but immediately disappeared when I got in trouble, who are now like running back. I'm kind of like lukewarm. Like, do I understand that, they were just like preserving themselves even though they did nothing wrong? And like, I should be open arms to them? Or is it like, what, fuck them. They only kind of took, and then, they see there's a chance that something might happen again in the future. They're running back now. So like, I don't know the answer yet. They're all kind of things that, keep me awake and that I think through.
Yeah. It must be kind of hard having people have preconceived conceptions about you now, because like the news paints a picture of you, and it's like, I'll be honest with you, it's not a good one. Like people just look at you as like a scam artist, con artist, et cetera, et cetera. Is it hard having to go to investors now and try to get money? Because like the news is powerful either way, because like social media, obviously you're trying to make your way and have your own type of image that you're trying to show that you're not these things, and it was just a fuck up mistake, that you were younger, it just inexperienced. Is it hard going to investors now trying to find money for this?
To segue from that, he said he can't do investors anymore, but,
no.
but it's a good question for like trying to bring on employees or customers for your agency now. So you have customers and employees, or maybe you have the same objections.
Yeah. I'm finding there's very few people who are like in the middle. And I think there's a lot of smart people who just want nothing to do with me. So there's no conversation, right? Like they don't reach out, or like if I try to reach out to them, they don't respond. But most of the people who are, established companies or customers or groups that I speak with, like they've been super supportive. And I kind of think that like really smart people feel strongly in either direction. So I'm not getting a lot of like the teetering, like, well, maybe, but I don't know. It's more of like, fuck it. Like we don't care. Like we believe in the good we're in, or like fuck off so much we're not even going to respond to you. So I think it's like been more of like a visceral, polarizing
I think it comes
reaction.
with a little bit of experience. Like if you've tried something like pretty crazy before, or tried to pull something off, then in I think a lot of cases you'd also recognize that mistakes are really easy to make when you're trying to do something really awesome. So I think maybe some people that have tried before and maybe failed or done well could maybe see your side a little easier.
Yeah, so like entrepreneurs are definitely more open, because I think like they failed a lot, they stumbled a lot, they've done stupid things a lot. People in more traditional industries where like they have someone to report to and they can, they would get in trouble for having any controversy, are obviously more hesitant. But I also think there's some like weird, everybody only cares about themselves at the end of the day, right? So there's like, I think everybody kind of has like a weird mentality where they like, wait, what did I do wrong? Like them thinking this, and they start like worrying about their own issues and how they kind of contextualize like their own problems and like skeletons in their closet. I think is super interesting. I can almost like see people's wheels turning sometimes, as they all kind of bring it back to themselves and what they're ultimately worried about or not worried about.
And obviously, now that you have, how many companies have you really been involved in now up until this point total?
So I had 3 like that were venture backed, Spling, Magnises, and Fyre, and then the ones like before that were just small, non-funded.
And are you
startups.
never able to raise capital ever again, or is there a point where you're able to actually go back into the market and do that? Okay,
I'm not sure. So yeah, it's like,
can you pull like a Kanye and do a GoFundMe?
I think I was destroyed for that.
He did it and he got it somehow. Remember that when he raised like a ton of money on there when he went like bankrupt? Was that, I think it was like 4 years ago or something like that? Yeah, he did.
Oh,
that.
really?
And it actually worked for him.
Oh, that's hilarious. I didn't know.
That is crazy.
Next thing you know, he had Yeezy after that.
Yeah, seriously. Fuck.
I mean, I guess, one question, I know we're kind of getting close here, but I was saying, when it comes through all this, right, you've had such a crazy experience. You've done so many things. You've learned a lot of lessons. How have you not been demotivated to go back into the entrepreneur game? Is it just, do you feel like it's in your blood? Because coming from me, like I have that kind of entrepreneurial spirit. I've tried a bunch of different shit throughout my life, and I feel like I'll never get demotivated. Do you feel that same way, or did it cross your mind like maybe I shouldn't try something new? Maybe I should try to play it safe and just see what I can do, moving forward?
So I think I kind of came out of the gate swinging this time around. I think it's harder mentally more than anything else. Every time something like small goes wrong now, I think I take it like a lot harder than I did before. And I think I was really good, which is ultimately bad. I was really good before at ignoring and not really caring about like a lot of the small losses or negative like feedback or whatever it was. And now I think I take everything to heart more because I understand like what the potential downsides are. So I can see why people who go through like a massive failure just like lose all their ambition. And like, I totally get it. But yeah, I think I have like, I'm super young, right? I'm 31 now. So hopefully I have 20, 30 years to try to build something. So might as well try to do something impactful.
Sure. Yeah. And then with this agency, are you focused more on, like brand events? I mean, you kind of talked about helping brands go viral. What is the core principle in that? What is some stuff you're focusing on, service wise?
Like helping create content and then marketing strategies for that content.
Totally.
I mean, shit, they can't take that away from you. Your marketing is on point. I'll give it to you.
Yeah, that's close to what Dom and I do, so we don't have to talk.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah.
No, but it's good that you came out.
Sure.
There's two ways that people come out. They could have either looked to you like, oh, Billy McFarland's out of jail. Look, he's a loser now. He's nothing after Fyre Festival. But the fact that you're coming out swinging and actually putting forth an effort to try to like do big things like that says a lot. Like, everyone hates people at first, and then like it's like a slow but sure trend that like they're kind of on his side now. Well, look, he's paying everything back. He's doing what he's got to do. He's making amends. I think doing that is important in like rebuilding your image.
And it's been like 4 years of people not hearing Billy's side as well, or getting to hear from him, and just us getting to know you right now. I can tell like you're a much better person than the picture has been painted. You've made some mistakes, but who hasn't?
Yeah.
So
yeah. Yeah, that's one of the hardest things about prison is like it's forced time out, and then just not being able to respond. Like even people who knew me really well and like who might have been there for the certain like event or moment, who were hearing that event or moment now be talked about in a different narrative by the media, even though they start like questioning their own memory when they hear so many different people like tell them about it. And then I've literally seen it where like I go and see someone who I haven't seen in 5, 6, 7 years. And we start talking, and like 2 or 3 minutes in, they kind of like snap, like, oh, wait, like this was the guy that I remember. It wasn't the story that was concocted about that one time when something didn't happen. Like, yes, I was wrong. Yes, I deserve to go to jail. But it's been really crazy even seeing like what the media messaging can do to a normal person who didn't know me before. So yeah, it's
and they're looking for that. Like as a news outlet, it's like there's gonna be people that like Piers Morgan. He honestly he grilled you, which is like his thing. What like people like the news outlets, they're like they want that like negativeness on somebody because it just brings more clicks. Like I think it's unhealthy because yes, he fucked up, made a mistake. Your life is never gonna be the same again with like the money you owe and all this shit. So it's like, why not paint more of a positive picture of what he's trying to do right now instead of just like Pierce kept trying to like contort you on other things and come back like, well, you did this, well, you should have thought about it at the time. Well, okay, how about we like shine a light on more of the positive things and what you have not been able to say for 4 years while you've been like in jail.
Everyone already knows all the negative. Let's take a look.
That's what I'm saying. Everyone knows the negative. They've been hearing about you for since the documentary came out and how many people saw it. Like they know the bad side. Why don't we hear the side that's more positive and maybe what people didn't see behind closed doors? That's what I think.
I think the issue for mainstream media is that there are more people in like middle America who were too scared to try rather than the number of people who tried and failed. So for that audience who is too scared to ever try, the negative press is actually a feel-good story for them because they're sitting at home mad they never really went for it. And now they're justifying all their life decisions. Like, hey, look at that guy who went and did that. Like I was smart enough to never go and try something too crazy because now I have my kids in my car and my husband or whatever the situation is. I'm like, that goes to that audience. And this is why podcasts are super interesting for me is because the podcast audience is more like younger, cutting edge, open to new concepts. And they're the ones who are maybe thinking about trying to go for that. So I think it's just more relatable to them and just kind of shows the shift in mindset.
And I hope people that are watching this that maybe have that mindset can just take your story and just learn from it instead of blowing up the comments. Hopefully they can take it, learn from it, and say, okay, if I ever start a festival, like here's, maybe where he went wrong, and this is how I could do it differently.
Step one, no island.
And also like, but like I think the biggest lesson is, and so many entrepreneurs, like I just remember a lot of my peers when I was starting like Spling and being around them in the accelerator programs, like they think life is that one business, especially for the young entrepreneurs. Like life is not your first business or your third business or your second business, whatever. There's so much more to it. And if you fail, honestly, you're not going to piss anybody off. Like, yeah, your investors might be mad for a couple of weeks, but like if they're professionals, like they'll get over it and they'll appreciate you like taking that swing. And they're the ones most likely to back you again on the next one. So it's really never that big of a deal if you fail, honestly. And I think that a lot of first-time entrepreneurs don't understand there's life outside of that business. Like your life success and happiness.
Fail honestly and fail forward.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
And there's no problem with that.
I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is kind of coming up on time right now, so I just want to say thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you. It's been great to get to know you, and I look forward to hopefully connecting in the future. Do you have any kind of last message you'd like to share with everybody watching right now on what you're doing moving forward and everything like that?
Yeah, thank you guys. So really trying to build PYRT. If I'm allowed to say, like, we're hiring. So if anybody wants to join us, we have a really cool partnership with a company called Bounty Hunter World. So if you go to bountyhunterworld.com/PYRT, you can see all of our jobs. And if you refer any of your friends that we end up hiring, like you'll join our PYRT crew and we'll take you to one of our locations and kind of make you part of the squad. So love people to join us. Yeah. And guys, like if you're thinking about it, go for it. Just do it honestly and just try to make shit pop off and good things will happen.
We wish you the best. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
I appreciate it, Billy.
Thanks so much,
guys.
Billy.
Thanks a lot.
Talk to you guys soon.
Yep.
Everybody,
Have a
thank
good
you for
holiday.
watching. See you later.
Later, guys.
Bye-bye.